Okay, so after we finish filing and all of our lines are nice and crisp and we don't have any dents in our edges, then we are ready to move on to the next step, which is sanding. So filing refines our edges. Sanding is going to refine our surface and make it beautiful and consistent, and remove any like scratches that are in there that we got in there from any of the steps we've done so far. So we have a bunch of sandpaper. We have 3 different grits of sandpaper, actually 4, but for this project we're going to be using 3 different ones. 220, where it says right there, is our roughest grit. That's the one we're going to start with. And then we also have 320, which is a bit finer, and then finally 400, which is our finest grit. So the higher the number, the finer it is. The lower the number, the rougher it is. So we're starting low and going high. So I'm gonna like rip off a little piece of this to work with, which I already did. And I wanna make sure that I either have the number on there, or if I didn't rip off a piece that already says the number, just write it on there so I know what it is. The 400 is easy to tell because it's blue, but the 220 and the 320, a little bit harder to tell once they're ripped up. So I have my piece of 220. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to get in a little closer. Okay, so like I said, the point is to refine my surface. So I am going to, and this sanding does work in both a back and forwards motion. So I can go both directions. This piece is a little bit harder than most to work on because it has a big hollow area and also has points. So I'm going to be a little bit more careful. But my goal is to sand this surface until I don't see any scratches left in there, going any other direction. So I can still see right there, you can see that scratch. So I'm going to keep sanding until that little scratch goes away. One important thing is that I am sanding all in parallel lines. I don't know if you can see them. And so it's very neat and clean. That also is going to help me know when I'm done. So let me show you on this. If I'm doing small pieces, I like to put my pointer finger and then kind of hold these other 2 fingers, kind of wrap around, push down with my pointer finger as I go. So it's a little bit faster than if I'm like really gentle about it. And also sand like this. I'm a fan of the pointer finger method. Sometimes I also do thumb. But yeah, point being, I'm trying to make these very neat parallel lines. I think that's a little bit tricky at first when you get started. A lot of people sand a little bit more irregularly, kind of more of a circular pattern. And that just makes it look a bit messier, and it also makes it harder to tell when you're done. More of a clean finish here, more of a messy appearance there. So this is what I'm going for. And the main reason I want my lines to be parallel, well, 2 reasons. 1, it just looks neater and more professionally done. And 2, it's going to let me know when I'm done. So if all my lines are going the same way and I see like a scratch going a different direction out of place, I know I need to keep going. Once I complete this, so I get all of the scratches out, I would go all the way down to the edge. You can see I didn't go all the way down to the edge, and I should. Kind of like how I went all the way to this edge. So I want the whole surface nice and consistent. At that point, I can go to my next grit of sandpaper, the 320, and that's going to help me further refine my surface. basically we're just making like a series of finer and finer scratches. So this part is ready to move up to my 320. I have a piece of 320, and when I switch sandpaper grits, I'm going to also switch directions. So originally I sanded this way, and now I'm going to sand the opposite way. And that's gonna just help me know when I'm done sanding. So my goal is now to refine the surface up to my 320 grit. And so I'm gonna keep sanding until I cannot see any of my 220 lines. So right now, if I pick it up, move it around in the light, I can still see scratches going this direction. So I just want to keep sanding until all I can see, there you can see a bunch of them right there, all I can see are my vertical lines. Okay, so I really just only focus on this middle part. You can see, I think you can see pretty well the difference between this middle part. So if I move it around in the light, I don't see any scratches going my previous direction. Whereas in this little section right here, I can still see a bunch of them and a few right on the edge here. So this middle part is good. This side I would need to continue doing until, yeah, make sure you're moving it around in the light so you can really see. Like right there, I would also need to do more. All my lines are going this direction. Once I get to that point, I'm going to switch to my 400 grit sandpaper and go back my original direction. So opposite of my 320 lines, this way. And again, the reason I'm switching directions is so I know when I'm done. So I'm gonna keep going until all of these 320 lines are removed. And that's gonna be my final grit of sanding. Once I finish my 400, I will be done, at least on the front. So because we are making three-dimensional pieces that you can view from multiple sides, handheld objects, we are going to be sanding both front and back. So everything that will be visible once your final piece is put together. I'm going to focus on one side at a time. So I'm going to get my whole front piece, the whole front of my piece, sanded up to 400. So that's looking good. This section, again, not this area. Move it around the light. I don't see any lines going that way, at least from where I'm sitting, so that looks good. So we'll pretend my whole front piece is finished. When I finish my sanding, I want to cover this side with tape because it took me forever and I want to protect it. All of this metal dust right here that I've created in sanding, number one, you should definitely wash your hands after you sand. Do not touch your eyes with this. But number two, this is like, I can scratch up all the sanding I did if I just flip it over and kind of move it around on there. So once you finish the side up to 400, tape it, flip it, then I can go through the whole process on my back. So yeah, any part that is showing, you would need to sand. This is an example of not the best project, which I already mentioned to you guys, but any part that is showing needs to be sanded. So front of the head, front of the body, the front of, like the part of this piece that's behind this piece does not need to be sanded. Same as the back of this head did not need to be sanded because you will never see it. But as you are able to move it around in 3 dimensions. Any part that is visible once it is completed and these 2 layers are attached should be sanded up to 400. So for something like this, pretty much the front and back of both pieces, you can see that, maybe you can see that. I didn't do the back because it's an example, but I did the front, and you guys should do front and back. One also little trick I wanted to show you, if you have smaller pieces and are having trouble holding them while you sand, you can get a piece of tape, preferably like this painting tape or masking tape, not duct tape. There is duct tape in the studio, but that will leave a residue on your metal. So if you put it on a piece of tape and then sand, it will help you hold it. So for something like this, that's super helpful. My fingers aren't getting in the way. And when I do the smaller piece that goes on top of here, so I'll complete this, but I won't make you watch it. And then the final trick is if you have a very small piece that is decently flat. This one got a little bent, so it won't work perfectly, but you can make a little tab with your tape. So stick it together like this. Hold your piece of metal like this, and then instead of moving the sandpaper on your metal piece, you can move your metal piece on your sandpaper. This does not work very well for big pieces, but is perfect for little pieces. So pretty good. That's where it wasn't totally flat. That's kind of the only scenario where this doesn't work very well. But if I keep going, I can fill that in, or I can flip it over and kind of do this part by hand. So those are the tricks and tips of sanding. And again, sanding every visible part of your project up to 400 grit.